Hey, welcome to a special edition of the Brewgooders, the Brew Outlaws. So obviously, the podcast is our beer, comics, and a sort of geekery on a Thursday night. But every so often, we sort of skew, or does it skew? Is that the word? Segue is the word I was thinking of. We
All
segue
right.
into conversations and discussions
Mm.
about other stuff, including we've obviously me and Stu do wrestling. Me, Andy, and Tom do like football from time to time, and obviously we just do one-offs of random shit. But mostly me and Stu are massive wrestling fans, and it was quite a big. It's been quite a big couple of weeks in wrestling generally, and um, of intrigue and excitement and all the nonsense that you would. Yeah, wrestling's pretty weird, so we thought we would relax and go to the cinema and enjoy a movie
Mm-hmm.
about pro wrestling, and then question all of our life choices afterwards. Yeah. Iron Claw is yeah. Iron Claw, new movie, came out last week, starring. I've not got the cast list. What you have you got a
Mm.
cast list there?
No, I could tell you the name of three people, but I could find it.
Let's see. Who's your three? And I don't know if I can I don't know if I can name a couple more folk.
Well, you've got Zac Efron as your lead. Then you have Lily James as his wife, and then Jeremy Allen White as um, uh, Kerry Von Erich.
He was Kerry, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was got like folk that I didn't know. I didn't know Harris Dickinson, but he was David. He was excellent.
yeah. He
Um,
was great.
and yeah, and yeah, who else we got? Yeah, it was a really good cast. Who else we got? Oh, this is not in any. This is
Yeah.
not in any decent order though. And I've got. Should I think the guy that played Mike? Oh, it was Stanley Simons. Who hadn't seen him really in anything to be honest.
Yeah. And
And
then you had
Holt,
Holt McCallanany,
yeah,
playing the father.
Calani. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nah. Yeah. And then obviously, I think Maura Tierney, who I knew from
yeah,
she's one of the main
ER.
characters in she was in ER for a while and in the affair and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like a really good character actress though that you would I think you'd recognize if you saw her. So
Mm.
when I saw that she was in it and who she was playing, I was like, oh, that's that I didn't realize she was in it, so I was quite chuffed. She was good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sort of historical biopic of one of the great wrestling tragedies of in history, in it,
Of
like
all
the
time,
curse of the Von Erichs.
like
Yeah,
top three wrestling
um,
tragedies.
yeah. I was watching a video last week from Cultaholic who basically were like, I was Cultaholic are a wrestling podcast I watched, and they were talking about like you had the all this stuff that was happening in sort of more recent, at the time of recording. It's quite a tumultuous time in pro wrestling with the WWE's. I don't want to go into too much details, but like obviously there's been a mad change in ownership in the last couple of weeks and
Mm-hmm.
scandal and stuff. But I was watching this video on Cultaholic about like just all the other scandals that we sometimes forget, basically forgotten scandals because there's some massive ones out there. But obviously I don't know if you would call what happened to the Von Erichs as a scandal, but it was pretty brutal what
No.
happened to them
Yeah.
regardless. They mentioned it briefly and we're just like, yeah. So, but yeah, that's good. So yeah, the Von Erichs were a wrestling sort of royal family, and wrestling has more than one royal family. But the Von Erichs is the Von Erichs story is one of total immense tragedy, and it was just kind of a retelling of that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find it going in? Like obviously you like we both knew the story. Like there's been several documentaries on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was definitely like a lot of intrigue, like to the point where it was like, wow, it's like the fact that it was like A24 had picked it up and they were going to like make this movie about this story, and you just thought, oh, this is gonna be dark. Like it's like you've always heard of the Von Erichs if you've really paid attention to
Yeah,
wrestling. Like that name gets mentioned, and it was probably really first came to my attention with like the WWE Hall of Fame
Yeah.
induction from like I think it was like 2009, and that's probably the first
Yeah, I think it
like
was.
real exposure to the Von Erichs to me. But then watching things like Dark Side of the Ring kind of like filled in the blanks. Like, oh
Yeah.
Christ, okay. And that was like 2019 maybe. So
Yeah.
10 years later, and now like fast forward 5 years, going into it, it's like, right, yeah, they didn't have a like good things did not happen to this family.
Yeah.
And even like watching the trailer as a reminder, it kind of like, oh, one of them must die in like a motorcycle accident and something else, and then I'm sure someone gets shot. And yeah, I would just completely forgot the majority of the story. The fucking tragedy, the curse of the Von Erichs. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, what was it, 2 hours and 10 minutes? I described it to someone. I was talking someone was like, you would like this film, and the text was like, yeah, I saw it on Sunday, and it's like, it was like a punch to the gut, a punch to the heart, and like a punch to the balls watching this film. They're just
Yeah.
it was like
It
by
did feel like
the
fun.
end you're winded and teary eyed going, okay, yep. That's the story of the Von Erichs.
Yeah. Oh, it's awful, isn't it?
Mm.
So I don't know, like a brief overview for those that don't know. So like the Von Erichs were a family. Patriarch was Fritz, not his birth name, but was like a wrestler in the 50s and 60s, I think 70s, who um, wrestled for the NWA, which and like sort of that sort of era of wrestling, it was
Mm-hmm.
territorial. You know, every wrestler had like the wrestling landscape was kind of broken up into geographical areas, and there was an awful lot of like not crossing borders and stuff like that, which kind of got ruined in the 1980s. But Fritz at that time, Fritz was like a well known regional bad guy in wrestling, um, and but it was never the big champion, and always kind of felt like he was over um, overlooked for that honor, and
Mm-hmm.
it sort of defined how he raised his kids. It's pretty much that. Like he lived wrestling and then just made all his kids do the same. And so the Iron Claw title refers to his finishing move, but also
Mm-hmm.
there's the Iron Claw of his sort of his
Grip on his family.
his, his grip on his family. Absolutely, uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and yeah. And then obviously the majority of the film takes place in the late 70s through to the early 90s as you follow this family that face multiple tragedies, and yeah, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
just like it's pretty gut wrenching. They were saying like the Dark Side of the Ring, you can like it's an hour and you kind of it's a very emotionally charged sort of view of a view of that sort of the tale of this family. I'd seen Cultaholic, I mentioned them earlier. They do a fantastic, more like it's not as long. It's a wee bit more sort of factual, rather than like dwelling on the or not or sort of sitting and having sort of talking head style like
Mm-hmm.
discussions with people that were there. So a wee bit more palatable in terms of from a historical context, but absolutely it's still awful. Like it's absolutely awful. And
Yeah.
um when you but when you sit on the Iron Claw, it's just so emotionally like it's draining. I was knackered by the time I came out of the film.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's it.
yeah,
It's one of those things. If you're watching it and you're none the wiser, you're probably thinking to yourself, what else could happen to this family? Jesus
yeah.
Christ, give them a break. And yeah, it's just nuts.
It was totally like
And
um, I thought about it and I was trying to explain it to my family when I got back because I did what I think most men, obviously, I imagine the majority of the folk that watch this show, watch this film, you and me are probably sort of core demographic for this movie. You know, wrestling
probably,
fans
yeah.
who are aware of the history and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
as a but then as a result of a kind of like our age within that demographic, we're also fathers. So there was that whole thing about like I know we messaged back and forth a wee bit, but like I went home and was just checked in with my kids who were playing Xbox and were just like, Dad, leave us alone. So, but yeah, certainly that I heard like a wee bit of giggling in our screen at the start of the movie, but then it just kind of there's when the first Vonnegut brother passes away of David, like at the funeral, the dad makes a point about like we can still have a go at trying to become as a family the NWA champion.
Yeah,
and it's almost laughable about how like skewed his view of the situation is. And then I think he does it again when when the other brothers when Mike gets ill, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like it just keeps bringing it back to that point where it's like, you know, your obsession with something quite obscure is killing your kids, and so.
And that's it. Like they don't have like a family tree. It's almost like a family ranking system. Like that first scene when they're all sat at the dinner table, and they're sitting talking about getting Mikey into wrestling, and then he pulls out the rankings and says, "Well, Kerry's my number one. Then we've got David. Then we've got Kevin, and then we've got Mikey." And it's like, you need to prove yourself if you want to get up in the rankings of how much I love you. And like,
that's
not equal.
That was laughable. Like,
aye.
If you were going into that not really understanding what was going to happen, that's almost comedy writing, isn't it? Like you can imagine like Will Ferrell saying that in like a satire comedy movie, but when you sort of know where it's going, you're like, that's rank, like that ranking system is rank. Like it's horrible.
And is it based off of win-loss records?
Yeah. Well, that was the whole thing as well. Like,
booking it.
He was booking it, and the other thing is wrestling. Like, there was a really awesome scene when Zac Efron's character Kevin meets his future wife, and she does that whole "is it fake?" and he's like, "Oh, there's nothing fake about what we do." Yeah. And then obviously he's alluding to the fact that actually, you know, obviously wrestling's predetermined and choreographed to an extent, but it's like it's killing them. You know what I mean? It's such an integral part of their family's existence. It's just
and even like that moment where I can't remember who he was wrestling, but it was the moment where he was thrown to the outside and landed on the concrete, and like it's like that high pitched sound, like you kind of get like what would be going off inside his head, and like he's winded, and then he's like, "Fuck, I can't feel my back." And it's like one of those times where in wrestling, like 10 counts, it always leads to number 9. But I think this is the first time in cinema where it looks like that almost looks like a count out. This looks dramatic. Like he's like paralyzed on the ground, and then hauls his ass up on like the 9 count just to get in. Whereas when you watch that on wrestling, you're just thinking, man, these guys are milking it. Get up.
Well, I think that was one of the things that the film did really well. It was there was his match with Harley Race, wasn't it? It was to get let him in.
Yeah, that's it. Aye, because they caught him off guard.
But like the sort of Fritz's the father's response to that whole thing is like, that's just what they do. It's how they haze you and stuff. Like, you know, like he's like that was part of the test, and it's like, no, that was an assault. Like it was I thought the film did a really, really good job, and I think that wrestling match in particular was like, you were none the wiser. Like, and I think that was kind of and even as watching it as in the cinema, like you were trying to work out where the veil of realism was. Like, at what point was it? You know, is this part of the show? And like you say, like the 10 count being like the dramatic 9 to get back in the ring and stuff. You're like, that whole match would have happened at the time and been recognized as just that would all been part of the show, when actually it wasn't. It was like a receipt, or there's all these different sort of wrestling, this sort of insider wrestling terminology, which basically like on like when you take a step back and you observe actually what happened, like the guy was roughed up to make a point, like a political point.
Aye.
Um, but yeah, that scene in particular, that match with Harley Race, and there was several bits like that throughout the actual wrestling match bits were fucking cool. Like I thought they did really, really well, and obviously the sound design and the lighting and just the camera being in the ring during that, like it made wrestling look amazing.
Aye. Even just the introduction for when they were going to the ring, was it like a Rush song that was playing?
Yeah, it was Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, and it was just them walking like just up the ramp and then coming down into the crowd, and the camera's following them all the way through, and it's just like these guys were rock stars back in the day, like that. I guess regional wrestling, like, because that's it. There's all Texas, wasn't it? So like these guys were like A-list celebrities in Texas at that point in time. So them coming out and the crowd screaming for them, and like the dudes just looked like the Beatles.
Yeah, totally that. And yeah, they were a total sensation, weren't they? Like the Von Erichs just generally, like I think even like that territory scene where they just rocked it, and like you then like they were like the regional stars, and then you would bring in like international or national like Ric Flairs and your Harley Races to challenge them, and that's I mean that's still that's like even within sort of the small independent scene in Scotland, for example, that's something that still happens, where like you like the companies will set up like their local guys, and then bring in somebody. And like when I was involved in Reckless Intent in Livingston for a wee while, and we had that where it was like you basically like one of the bigger names in your group, and then they would bring in a Grado for him, or you know what I mean, or Colt Cabana would show up, and you would so but then these wrestlers would come in and like give them like that kind of rub, that kind of that exposure, so that when they went away, you'd in theory leave like a bigger star. But obviously, obviously that's not what Fritz was doing. It was mad. I thought, casting was great. I thought I generally like. I'll just kind of hold my hands up and say that I thought the whole film was great. It was very emotional. I was drained. I don't know if I'll watch it again very soon. But I thought in terms of like how it was shot and what it looked like and the pace and that was great. Sorry, I'm just running through a loose structure. What did you think of the cast?
To be honest, the guys were great. Like you've got your star power with like Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White, and when you get like a biopic of something, and you know that thing at the end where they show you the wrestler and then they show you the real person, like black and white photos or something, just to say this is who they portrayed. Like the Von Erichs had a look. These were tall, staunch guys, and Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White did not look the part. Harris Dickinson, who played David, was only like he was tall and had the hair and a long drawn face. He looks like a Von Erich, but I could see why Zac Efron and Jeremy both were like your main roles. Like these, that's the star power there. This is like multi-award winning actor from The Bear. Zac Efron's like a household name. So if they want to play the part, that's going to get so much more eyes on your movie. So you just have to suspend that part, like disbelief. But the actor that played the dad was brilliant. Like it was just such a bastard, and I recognized him from something, but it wasn't until I looked up.
Because I recognize him. I think he tends, in the things I've seen him in, he tends to play like a heavy. Like he's never. I've not really ever seen him be like a main guy. Like he's not
Yeah.
like which is why I was like when he was really good and he played the part
Mm-hmm.
really really well. He's been in like Jack Reacher, the Jack Reaper movie. He was one of the heavies in the movie. I'm trying to think of the movies I've seen. He's been on loads actually.
Yeah.
He was he was
I
one of the
only
guys in Fight
recognize
Club.
him.
I knew him from Fight
All
Club
right.
because I think he was one of the more vocal members of Project Mayhem.
Right. Okay. He's
He's the one that's
definitely
like
plays a part in the Netflix series. Is it Mindhunter? Um,
uh,
I think that's a show
uh,
that's based around like two
yeah, he does.
detectives, and he's one of them.
He's, yeah, 19 episodes. So yeah, he would have been one of
Yeah.
the main boys. Eh?
Aye.
So like been in Blue Bloods, the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
What I actually recognised him from was and it's probably quite an obscure film, so like folk aren't going to like hear it and be like, oh right, aye. He was one of Sean Penn's main goons in Gangster Squad with
All right.
Ryan
Okay.
Gosling and Josh Brolin.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I knew him from. And I was like, oh, like,
Aye.
but nah, like this definitely feels like a step. Like, yeah, he had a whole lot of heavy lifting to do in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and then I think he smashed it. To be honest.
Yeah. And even the actress that played the mother, like even she became like a dislikable character towards the
Mm-hmm.
end, like to the point where like Zac Efron's character Kevin went to like speak to her that could more or less like you're the dad will listen to you almost. Whereas like right, you need to tell him to like take it easy on Mikey, or you need to tell him to phone Kerry, and things like this. And she's just like, no, you sort it out between yourselves. Like she just
Yeah,
shuts, like just they kind of just like her focus was on the church and like keeping her
yeah.
family fed. If there's drama, they sort it out themselves. But
I
yeah, it
think
must have been frustrating.
yeah, I think very much she like I think she definitely portrayed like to an extent being a victim of that Von Erich family structure where like the Fritz is always kind of pushing like the importance of physicality and like you have to
Yeah.
be the biggest and the best to succeed, and because she like I don't know I kind of I don't know if I'm reading it properly, but I read it more as like a sort of like a toxic male dominated like
Hmm.
a dominated kind of view of the world, which I think wrestling in particular wrestling was like most sports like really really guilty of that and probably still is to a large extent, where it's like her role in her role was that of like a matriarch, like the mother and the homemaker, because like
Hmm.
she's not big and she's not tough and she's not male, so like her role becomes, and I think that kind of feeds down to the brother Mikey as well, because he wasn't big, he wasn't tough. Fritz didn't really have any interest in him, which was a shame because
Hmm.
actually, you know, he he was a very good musician. Like they kind of played that, and
Yeah, he
he
had
was
his own passions outside of wrestling. Like, 'cause that's what's like. Yeah, Fritz has got like the iron claw in the family, but also like the wrestling business on the other side. Like, you're a Von Erich, you'll get in the ring at some point in your life, whether you want to or not. It seems.
yeah,
So when one of them was like, "Oh no, I really quite fancy like going playing with my bands," and like the whole family shut. Well, the mum and dad shut it down. No matter the brothers saying, "Oh, we could look after him, we could chaperone." Like, no, if you're not going out your way to go do something like if you were going to a wrestling show, they were probably like, on you go, no worry, no
yeah,
question a doubt. But yeah, it's the fact that it's like, no, you're straying off of the path here, pal, with this interest in music. Music's got to get you nowhere. Get back over here.
yeah. I thought it was quite interesting. He wasn't massively confident. That character wasn't massively confident as a
Mm.
musician, but he also had talent. But like a respectful parent would harness like the passion
Yeah.
and do that. And so like obviously like I thought it was quite clever because I was fully expecting him to be really good on the guitar, and he was good on the guitar, and I was expecting him to be like this just really amazing frontman, but like because he wasn't a wrestler, his dad wasn't interested. But then there was a kind of a couple lines about how like he did a lot of like the production stuff in the background and was really good. But because he wasn't in front of the camera flexing and performing, like actually he probably would have been by default one of the more successful brothers had they just left him alone and were like, oh, he's actually quite good at the technical stuff, we'll let him do that. So it was a total shame.
I mean, that's it. Even the sorry to talk over you, mate. The mind games between the brothers, in the sense that, right, okay, they're fighting to get ahead in the business, but it's also like fighting for like their dad's affection. It was when you seen that outburst from Kevin when David took the mic from him and then done like a really charismatic like promo, going off on Harley Race, getting the crowd up. And it just took like that moment for Kevin to kind of hesitate with the mic and realize he's not got like the charismatic, he's not got like the chops to be like the great athlete, wrestler, and a great character as well.
Yeah.
So when they seen that his brother was like gifted with the mic, it almost like the dad started ranking his brother
exactly
above him.
He did. It was exactly what he did. He'd ranked him higher, and it was like because he was getting better crowd reactions. He was like he leapfrogged up to the top of Dad's ranking system, and he was the one that was getting the NWA shot before everyone else. And
yeah,
and they were angry. They were angry at him for that, and it was like probably like less to do with the rest and more to do with I'm further down my dad's totem pole now. So yeah, it was it was just tragic. What I thought was quite interesting, like, and I was reflecting on this for chatting with you tonight as well. There was is it Lily Allen? Well, not Lily Allen. That she's a totally
Lily
different
James.
Lady. What was it? Lily James. Her character said something like, obviously, like there's this ongoing narrative with Zac Efron's character Kevin about the fear of the Von Erich curse, and he reckons his family's cursed, and by default he's cursed, and he spends a lot of time away from the family because he's got the genuine fear that like interacting with his family will pass the curse on. And she says, and it's quite early on in the film, she says something like, if there's a curse in this family, it's your dad, or the only curse in this family is your dad. And I remember feeling that was real, like that was probably the main punchline in the film, and it's said quite early on. I want to say it's maybe said like an hour in. It's maybe just after one of the first two brothers passes away. It's when she says it. But then like this continuation, it's like she can see it, but obviously then it takes like Kevin ages to finally he gets there on his own eventually. It takes I think probably Kerry's death to get there, and he's just like, no, actually, like at that point he's angry at his dad, and he realizes that that's him. I think his moment where he's like, it's dad, like it's the
and even like the realization when it comes to the getting the birth certificate for his son, like he hesitates about almost as like the passing on of the name. He says, no, let's just change the name on that. And his mind is probably like, right, this is how we could probably escape that Von Erich name.
Yeah, totally. It's just tragic. I think historically it's tragic. I thought some of those sort of more creative decisions in the film were quite interesting as well. Good and bad. I think good. Like I choked and had to like cover my mouth a wee bit when we were watching it together because I didn't want you to hear me go when Kerry passes away, and there's this really emotional scene where he's in the afterlife or he's moving on and he's met other brothers on the other side. That was horrible. Like
I was like, how could you do that to us? It was just like the moment where you seen Kerry walking in the garden, and I thought, oh, maybe this is moments before. And then the camera pans down, and there's 2 feet, and I'm like, you bastards! Oh, you bastards! Don't show us this. Like, who knows what this is? Like, you can't. And just in the boat.
It was poetic license, wasn't it? Like there wasn't a. that wasn't. It was obviously it was a dramatization of him passing on to the afterlife to be with his family. So it was like there was no historical accuracy to that,
Exactly.
or there
I
was,
know,
but you know what
but
I
it's
mean.
just like
Yeah,
the balls on you to think, yeah, we'll do this scene. Let's introduce him to his older brother Jack, and they're just like, oh my god,
yeah,
like
that was quite brutal.
yeah, aye, that was
And then
definitely one of the gut
I
punches.
thought it was brutal, but really, really good. I thought that was really effective, and that
Yes,
was the scene I
aye.
was trying to explain to my. I went home and tried to explain that scene to my family, and then that I broke down a wee bit there, and I was just like, oh my god, like I'm not going to talk about this film anymore. It was, it's just I'm just gonna. Obviously, I'm now doing it now, but at that time I'm just going to store this away and put this to the side, and
we'll save this for therapy.
yeah, totally. I found some of the wrestling casts, like obviously they used wrestlers and they used character actors and stuff to play some of the other historical figures. And I think the one that most people are criticizing, and I wanted to mention it as well, is that Ric Flair guy. Like it was the only that was like the one bit. There was a couple of effects issues throughout the film that maybe took me out of it as well. Obviously, Kerry's foot often looked like like a sock, you know, and like mostly he lost his about the bottom section of his leg in a motorcycle accident, which is obviously totally terrible. I thought the effect on that was sometimes really like you could tell he was kind of sitting on his foot to film a scene and stuff like that, but which obviously is fair enough. It's how you would have to do that. But that Ric Flair actor was just. I was really surprised that they kept that, and that's what they went with. When you had
it was almost as if the actor was given a picture of Ric Flair and his lines. I was like, right, this is what we're going for. There was like the whole aura was wrong. He was closer to like Al Pacino.
Yeah.
So I totally just agree. Like the woo was like off tone. Like, oh, that's the only thing you had to do right.
I was so surprised to get that in. I don't know. I've seen a lot of folk criticize it. I've not read much, and I probably will because I'm a total nerd. But a lot of critical discussion about like the film and its themes and stuff like that. And part of me was like, have they done this on purpose? Have they made Ric Flair deliberately? I don't know. Is there? It was just I was trying to work out because he was so on Ric Flair, and even down to like his walk and his like you say, he can do like the woo, and it was odd because like the Harley Race guy, I had to Google afterwards. Like he was pitch perfect too.
Yeah, like that book and aye.
He cut a promo before the match, and partly was like I never didn't follow up, but I was like, I wonder if they've cleaned up a historical promo from Harley Race, or if that's the actor. I think it was the actor, but it was great. So I just found the Ric Flair one just so like, and I suppose like a large proportion of people watching the film won't be wrestling fans, or it might just be it's a drama that like like you would maybe take your partner to and stuff like that. So like I asked Claire to see The Wrestler in 2009. She had no idea what was going on, and was asking me afterwards about who was the actors and who were the wrestlers and stuff like that, because she didn't know any of it, and she was really affected by the story. So I think if she watched that, she wouldn't really care about but like it just that was I just found that quite jarring. It's probably a very unique issue to specific wrestling fans watching that.
This one, like if you tried to kind of explain it to someone, obviously the wrestler's probably the closest thing when it comes to wrestling movies, but tonally or just the way it plays out, it's almost worth describing this film. If I had to explain it to someone, it's a bit like the film Foxcatcher.
Yeah, totally.
So again, wrestling and real life tragedy, and thankfully this one doesn't have any dodgy prosthetic noses. I reckon how they let Steve Carell looking like that, but Yeah, it's one of these films where it's like, fucking hell, we're only into February and I've already seen probably one of the best films of the year. And
Yeah,
it's probably going to be a really overlooked film as well.
yeah. It's in like, kind of that January, February is the kind of the death slot, isn't it? It's the
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I think, but it's interesting. I was going to ask you like how you would rate the film overall. I think we've talked about loads and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already said like probably one of the best films of the year. Do you think?
Yeah, I reckon if I could, I mean, January I saw Godzilla -1, and that again was an emotional roller coaster of a movie. So exciting, but this one was just a whole different level of emotions. So I've seen
Yeah,
like just two of the strongest movies I think I'll probably see this year. I can't imagine, I don't know, Kong and Godzilla, the new empire, or Ghostbusters, the frozen empire, is going to affect me as much as those films have already.
yeah. I'll say like for those that are like I think we've had quite consistent viewers all night, which is really good at the social. And I imagine we'll get kind of views just because we're talking about something that's in the public conscience.
Yeah.
But yeah, we often like chat about like movies that we've seen. You can catch us every Thursday night on Facebook and then on YouTube a couple of days later. But
Mhm.
yeah, this is going to be very. I try and catch all the specific sort of genre movies that kind of fall within our geek remit, and this is probably a step outside of that general remit, just because it's about wrestling, it's because about a family I knew. But yeah, I
Mhm.
can't imagine anything coming out that will impact in the same way, just because it's like you say, it's a totally different emotional impact. That's the way this film kicks.
Mhm.
Like you say, Godzilla Kong X could be
Mhm.
could be incredible, but it'll be like incredible within its genre
Like
of like monster geekness.
like a Transformers movie or like an
Yeah,
Avengers movie. It's got to be brilliant that way. It's but yeah, I mean, it's coming up for award season, and that's probably we've been saying the word tragedy a lot, but it's like I think the fact that this film was overlooked for any sort of nominations at all really kind of just like I don't know. I mean, I was looking, because whenever I'm scrolling on YouTube and it recommends something to do with Iron Claw, I end up watching it because I'm still kind of in the rut. The film still has this grip of me, so I'll probably just spend the next week just going, oh, let's have a look at this. And the Oscars, like the Academy Awards YouTube channel, actually have like a 10-minute clip about the Iron Claw, and it's the main cast, the director, and they're just talking about the cinematography, the story. Like, you went to the effort of filming all this, and you didn't even give them one fucking nomination.
yeah,
The
it's so
balls
bizarre.
on you.
I think it'll win awards. I think it will as the year goes on. That it'll
Mm,
pick up stuff. But the fact that it's been overlooked by obviously the Academy Awards is nuts. Actually, I've
mm-hmm,
seen. I used to quite religiously watch the Academy Awards and keep up with it, and then um, some of the things that get nominated, and you're like, I've seen about five better movies than any of these nominations. Like, um,
yeah, yeah.
don't get
I
me wrong, like
always try and
there's some
watch
incredible
the
ones as
best
well. But
pictures, but there's like it's always 10, and it's always hard to get access to all 10 movies like before the actual date of the Oscars.
mhm,
But I think it's BAFTAs this weekend, but Iron Claw's got nothing.
yeah.
But it's maybe the slot that's come out in the fact that we've got it in February, it was December in the States. Like,
When
where's this territory?
what's what's the window for nominations? Is it maybe because it's out now?
That's what
It's
I'm
not going to
thinking.
be. Um,
Has it missed the window to be considered? Because that's it. There's a whole lot of like silly like conditions like hoops you have to jump through. You have to have it in cinemas like in certain dates, and you need to kind of do all this promotion for it. And maybe like I think it's a choice. Like some directors might choose not to kind of push it. Maybe if the buzz isn't there and the time and money involved to kind of
I'm
tick the boxes with the academy.
I'm looking at it just now, and yeah, I'm looking at what the best picture Oscars are, and actually they're all from last year. But this is on Wrestle Talk, which is a really good website for just wrestling news and sort of speculation. And they were saying they're saying like it was released at a time, it just seems to be overlooked. I've seen I'm trying to how many of the films have I seen that? I've seen 1.5 of the of the 10 nominated because my copy there was an internet issue when I was trying to watch Oppenheimer, so I've only seen half of Oppenheimer. I've seen the holdovers, but the rest, and I've not seen Barbie. I've not seen Past Things, Poor Things, Past Lives. Sorry, Poor Things, The Zone of Interest, Killers of the Flower Moon, American Fiction, and Anatomy of a Fall, and Maestro are all the nominations.
Yeah, aye, that's it. So I've got some catching up to do, but I mean, could have easily just forgot about Maestro. Like that's Bradley Walsh with a fake nose. Like again, like that could easily be an Iron Claw, or like how they have those scripts, like best adapted script, like and that's all usually based on books, based on true events.
Yeah.
Like even just to kind of say like Oscar nominated movie like on the Blu-ray cover when it comes out and things like that. Just the fact that it got recognized for, and the same with Zac Efron, like the body transformation for that. Like I said to you last night, just looks like this staunch wee He-Man, and the fact that like that's obviously a lot of time and effort went into building that physique, the body transformation. Exactly, and then just for like, nah, you weren't a good enough actor to be nominated. It's like, what? This is the best thing I've ever seen him do.
Yeah, totally. I don't know, High School Musical's up there, like.
Yeah, I didn't want to say Dirty Grandpa, but
I think final recommend. If you are interested in this film or not sure, I was looking at kind of like films and things that you could kind of to feel in the vibe. I like you mentioned Dark Side of the Ring. Totally should check that out. Gives you the I say there's just a wee Google on YouTube. You'll get loads of discussions about the Von Erichs from people that were there. You know, retrospectives from podcasts and stuff. I say the Cultaholic one. I think the Cultaholic wrestling documentaries are all really good. Anyway, they're just they tend not to be too overtly emotional, but they definitely give you a very historically accurate and critical view of what's going on. So their overview of the Von Erichs is incredible. Like it's about 45 minutes, and it just goes through the timeline of the family. So yeah, just and then obviously go and see the film if you hit it in the cinema or like But I would totally recommend knowing what you were going into because it's a bit of a gut punch. If you went in it's Valentine's Day today at time of recording, you went in, oh, there's this wrestling film on with Zac Efron. It's Valentine's Day. That would be a good like that. If you say wrestling film Zac Efron released over Valentine's week, you'd assume it was a rom-com, or a comedy.
And
it's not.
I've seen like TikToks of ones where it's like, oh look, Zac Efron, he's smiling. This should be good. Let's start. And then they come out like Charlie Brown going. they're just
going for my dad.
Thank you for not pushing me so hard and whilst I was a child. Thank you for being lenient.
When I told you I wanted to stop playing rugby, thank you for just saying that's fine. Awesome. Was there anything else that I've missed that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think other than like who are like the wrestling connections that you see in it. I know at the very start, I think Kevin Von Erich's first match is supposedly like against the Iron Sheik, and that Iron Sheik was Chavo Guerrero Jr. Rolling around in the ring.
He was their choreographer as well, wasn't he? As well, he's
he's
did a great job.
A great career for himself. With the amount of like wrestling shows that have kind of came out when you had like Glow and Heels, and things along those lines. I think Chavo was brought on as like an expert, like proper like
Yeah,
stunt choreographer and producer and things like that. So he's made like
it's
a
good.
good wee living just doing that.
Yeah, totally. I know MGF isn't. He was credited as an executive producer. I did some research because my understanding was he was in more of it than I,
And what we
I
got,
didn't see him. I didn't recognize him. But I believe he filmed.
saw him for like a millisecond,
Mm,
and because that's it, there was talk that with all these things happening to the brothers and uh, Kevin was the only one that was still consistently wrestling, and then they were saying that they brought in people because you were saying it was like Lance Von
yeah,
Erich,
Lance Erich, who
like
was like
just
another
some
wrestler on the
fake
territory.
cousins. Aye, and it's MJF, like the AEW wrestler, but with like a blonde wig on, and
Yeah,
it's like the scene in the film is just from the camera focusing on Kevin, and he's reaching in to try and get the hot tag, and he's just being ignored, and the other guy's doing the match and getting the win,
yeah,
and he just gets onto one knee and does a pose, and that's where you could just see a slight out of focus MJF.
yeah. I think he was. Yeah, I'd read that as well. He was Lance, which was like I say this fictional brother that they brought in because Fitz kept like killing him. They kept bringing about the demise of the surviving one. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that, again, that's why I quite like the dark side of the ring documentary in particular because it does kind of go into a wee bit more detail about that sort of stuff, and it's just horrible. And actually, if you want to know more about the sort of ins and outs and the scandal and the horribleness of the family, like Dad was embezzling. You know, he was cutting corners and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His company was going out of business, and he was ripping off the wrestlers, including his own kids and stuff. And um, there obviously they focused on the emotional impact, but they did allude to some of the other stuff as well. Um, so yeah, and as I say, like things like I'm pretty sure Bret Hart mentions the Von Erichs in his autobiography. I've not read Ric Flair's, but I assume it's in there. I assume
Mm-hmm.
that there's a discussion about that in his one as well. So yeah, I would totally like. I know that you're a bit of a wrestling historian, and so I would quite like to just read about this stuff, like on
Yeah.
Wikipedia and things
Aye.
like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, thanks for playing that, man.
No problem at
I
all.
look forward to tomorrow. So at time of recording, we've got tomorrow because actually there's some more uplifting movie stuff to chat about. So if you enjoyed this, please check it. We're on Facebook every Thursday at 8 o'clock ish. UK time, and then obviously we're on YouTube and stuff like that as well. And but yeah, we're going to talk about this week. We're going to be talking about. We've got Ben Cullis of the 77 joining us, who's the editor in chief of the 77, who've been working with Alan Grant recently, which is quite exciting.
Mm.
Big name in comic rating, but also it's been Super Bowl weekend, so we got the really cool, like all the awesome trailers
Oh,
at
the
Super Bowl.
trailers. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, we're talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, Marvel Studios released the Fantastic Four thing today. That was pretty cool. It was like a
Oh yeah,
Valentine's Day
yeah,
card,
yeah. Aye.
including
Mm-hmm.
Ben Grimm, played by other the Bear. You and my favorite program last year, the Bear,
Yeah,
featuring
exactly. Richie from the Bear.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
great casting.
Because he's a great character, a great person to watch lose the rag.
Yeah,
Like the
totally.
outbursts he has on the bear, like just to see him as like just the thing having the same and similar temper tantrums will be perfect.
Yeah, we got. Wait, he has the immortal Fantastic Four line as well. Like we're gonna get him shout his clobbering time, which is going to be
Yeah.
excellent. So yeah, good. So yeah, we'll be talking about that tomorrow night. We'll have Ben on. Yeah, we'd like it if everyone that was touching this leave us a like, all that sort of stuff, and yeah, we'll hopefully do some more of these sort of recaps of films we've watched. So
Mm-hmm.
cheers, thanks everyone.
Night. Peace.